Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the UK Sangha, a weekly group meeting we have. Uh, you don't have to be in the UK to join it. It's just called the UK Sangha for whatever reason. Today we have three of our friends here, and there was no questions right off the bat, so I'm going to get into a sutta I picked out for today and read it and go by it and see what kind of wisdom we can gain from it. Um, this sutta is going to kind of repeat some recurring themes we have here in the Dhammarato Sangha, and I find this sutta like I've never read this, but this is what I was practicing from the first call that I had with Dhammarato. So it's a particularly um, relevant sutta. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is from the Majjhima Nikaya 19, and it's titled Two Kinds of Thought. So the Buddha will often do this. He'll take things and put them in a category. So there's 5 aggregates, or there's these 2 kinds of thought, etc. And this is a really useful way to practice. So it can kind of bring a sense of clarity and take the confusion out of our experience. So we get a sense of we actually know what's going on here and become unified. Okay. Thus have I heard, on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Ānāpānasati Park. There he addressed the bhikkhus thus. Bhikkhus, Venerable Sir, they replied, the Blessed One said this. Bhikkhus, before my enlightenment, while I was still only an unenlightened bodhisattva, it occurred to me, suppose that I divide my thoughts into 2 classes. Then I set on one side thoughts of sensual desire, thoughts of ill will, thoughts of cruelty. And I set on the other side thoughts of renunciation, thoughts of non-ill will, and thoughts of non-cruelty. So right off the bat, this just means there are wholesome thoughts and then there are unwholesome thoughts. And ill will and sensual desire is kind of straightforward, but renunciation can be kind of confused and misinterpreted. It kind of sounds very dogmatic, very religious, but renunciation really just means I don't need that to be happy. I don't need that beautiful woman, or I don't need that delicious food. I'm fine just how I am right now without it. That would be a thought of renunciation. Not, oh, I'm never going to, for instance, have sex ever again. I renounce that. That's more of a rule that we're projecting into the future instead of renouncing it here and now. I don't need that. I don't need sensual pleasures to be happy. I have something better. Okay. As I abided thus, diligent, ardent, and resolute, a thought of sensual desire arose in me. I understood thus. This thought of sensual desire has arisen in me. This thought leads to my own affliction, to others' affliction, and to the affliction of both. It obstructs wisdom, causes difficulties, and leads away from nibbana. When I considered thus, this leads to my own affliction. It subsided in me. When I considered thus, this leads to others' affliction. It subsided in me. When I considered thus, this leads to the affliction of both. It subsided in me. When I considered This obstructs wisdom, causes difficulties, and leads away from nibbana. It subsided in me. Whenever a thought of sensual desire arose in me, I abandoned it, removed it, did away with it. All right, so simply recognizing that certain types of thoughts just lead to your own harm is what lets you let go of it. So that's kind of taking the delusion out of the equation and replacing it with wisdom and a realistic view of things. So the reason why these thoughts keep happening and the reason why we keep repeating these thoughts is because of a certain kind of delusion that it's not going to harm you, or there's no danger in it, or it's going to satisfy a craving. But when you recognize this simply leads to your own harm and others' harm, it inspires the right effort to abandon that thought or that unwholesome state and take you somewhere better. Okay. As I abided thus, diligent, ardent, and resolute, a thought of ill will arose in me. A thought of cruelty arose in me. I understood thus. This thought of cruelty has arisen in me. This leads to my own affliction, to others' affliction, and to the affliction of both. It obstructs wisdom, causes difficulties, and leads away from nibbana. When I considered thus, it subsided in me. Whenever a thought of cruelty arose in me, I abandoned it, removed it, did away with it. Bhikkhus, whatever whatever a bhikkhu frequently thinks and ponders upon, that will become the inclination of his mind. If he frequently thinks and ponders upon thoughts of sensual desire, he has abandoned the thought of renunciation to cultivate the thought of sensual desire, and then his mind inclines to thoughts of sensual desire. If he frequently thinks and ponders upon thoughts of ill will, upon thoughts of cruelty, he has abandoned the thought of non-cruelty to cultivate the thought of cruelty, and then his mind inclines to thoughts of cruelty. Right, so the activity of our mind and how we feel is a sum total of our habitual tendencies. So what do we return to over and over again is what we feed. So you reap what you sow. If you sow the seeds of ill will, you're going to get a mind full of ill will and a perpetual habit full of ill will. And you're going to be an angry person. And it's going to manifest. And I'm not kind of like a woo-woo spirituality type of person, but people who are angry all the time, it will manifest physically. It will lead to your actual own literal harm and affliction. So simply being more stressed out, being more tense, it damages the body over time, actually. And if I were to guess, causes diseases and all kinds of problems, let alone the disease of the mind. So just simply suffering. So when you're having thoughts of ill will, when you're angry at other people, you're suffering yourself. And that's just something to return to again and again. So realize this is harming me. Hold on, I'm gonna put this picture. All right. And if anyone has anything to pop in, just go ahead. Just as in last month of okay, where did I leave it? Yeah. Just as in last month of the rainy season, In the autumn, when the crops thicken, a cowherd would guard his cows by constantly tapping and poking them on the side, and that with a stick to check them and curb them. Right, so guiding the herd. Why is that? Because he sees that he could be flogged, imprisoned, fined, or blamed if he let them stray into the crops. So too I saw in unwholesome states danger, degradation, and defilement, and in unwholesome states the blessing of renunciation, and in wholesome states the blessing of renunciation, the aspect of cleansing. Right. So the analogy here is like you're guiding your thoughts like a herd of cows or something into the right destination. So you don't want them to end up somewhere that's going to get you in trouble, that's going to cause problems. As I abided thus, diligent, ardent, and resolute, a thought of renunciation arose in me. So a thought of, I'm good right now. I don't need anything. This is enough. I don't need to go. I don't need that girl showing her ass on Instagram. I could be happy just right here. I don't need attention. I don't need validation. I don't need anything. I don't need sensual pleasures. I don't need my fix. I don't need alcohol. I don't need whatever drug I'm addicted to. That's a thought of renunciation. A thought of renunciation arose in me. I understood thus. This thought of renunciation has arisen in me. This does not lead to my own affliction, or to others' affliction, or to the affliction of both. It aids wisdom, does not cause difficulties, and leads to nibbana. Right, so this is wholesome. This is completely pure. This is good. This is whole. This is right. And it comes with the feeling of that. So when you have a wholesome thought, it feels good to have that wholesome thought. So there's no fear, there's no guilt or shame in it. It's completely wholesome. Like there's no danger in it at all. It's completely healthy. If I think and ponder upon this thought, even for a night, even for a day, even for a night and day, I see nothing to fear from it. But with excessive thinking and pondering, I might tire my body. And when the body is tired, the mind becomes disturbed. And when the mind is disturbed, it is far from concentration. So I steadied my mind internally, quieted it, brought it to singleness, and concentrated it. Why is that? So that my mind should not be disturbed. Okay, so this is actually really important. Once you actually do get yourself into a wholesome state, um, that's when you transition to stilling the mind and quieting things down. So if you're applying and sustaining a wholesome thought over and over and over again, like a mantra, at a certain point, it's going to lose its juice. So it's not going to be wholesome anymore, and you're going to tire yourself out. So you use the wholesome thought to get yourself in a tranquil, relaxed, and wholesome state so that you can put the mind to rest. So once you are actually in a wholesome state, uh, uh, through these completely pure and wholesome thoughts, you can still the mind and then bring yourself to an internal stillness and an internal quietness. And this is where you'll find um, a more profound sense of relief and deepening of the practice. I don't like to use the word deep because Dhammarato told me it's not a good word to use. It's not deep. So it's not like a dull state that you sink into. It's more of like a state of expansion, a state of clarity. So
Boundlessness.
what's that?
Boundlessness.
Boundlessness. And that's kind of later on down the line. It's not, at first, it's just wholesome. So boundlessness is where it leads to that if you keep doing this. But but yeah, so wide awake, light, like a feeling of lightness, lightheartedness. So it takes the seriousness out of things. A lighthearted, peaceful abiding. Pleasantness is a good way to think of it. Like, this is pleasant. You sink into a hot tub. Okay. The moment you sink into that hot tub, for that split second, there's no thoughts. All you're doing is going, there's no thought. So this is what it's talking about. This is the stilling of the wholesome thought, and then going into a more uh, uh, internally still state. And you are sinking into that hot tub and giving the mind a vacation because it works too hard. It needs a rest too. So it's not saying that all thoughts are bad. It's just saying we can learn to put them down every once in a while. All right. As I abided thus, diligent, ardent, and resolute, a thought of non-ill will arose in me. A thought of non-cruelty arose in me. I understood thus. This thought of non-cruelty has arisen in me. This thought does not lead to my own affliction, or to others' affliction, or to the affliction of both. It aids wisdom, does not cause difficulties, and leads to nibbana. If I think and ponder upon this thought, even for a night, even for a day, even for a night and day, I see nothing to fear from it. But with excessive thinking and pondering, I might tire my body. And when the body is tired, the mind becomes disturbed. And when the mind is disturbed, it is far from concentration. So it's kind of far from jhāna. So I steadied my mind internally, quieted it, brought it to singleness, and concentrated it. Why is that? So that my mind should not be disturbed. Bhikkhus, whatever a bhikkhu frequently thinks and ponders upon, that will become the inclination of his mind. If he frequently thinks and ponders upon thoughts of renunciation, he has abandoned the thought of sensual desire to cultivate the thought of renunciation. And then his mind inclines to thoughts of renunciation. If he frequently thinks and ponders upon thoughts of non-ill will, upon thoughts of non-cruelty, he has abandoned the thought of cruelty to cultivate the thought of non-cruelty, and then his mind inclines to thoughts of non-cruelty. Just as in the last month of the hot season, when all the crops have been brought inside the villages, a cowherd would guard his cows while staying at the root of a tree or out in the open. Since he needs only to be mindful that the cows are there, so too, there was need for me only to be mindful that those states were there. All right, so this is kind of profound. So you get the mind and apply it on the wholesome, and then you're like, okay, these thoughts are safe. I can rest. So you get your cows into the right pasture, into the right herds. You can check to see they're still there. Yep, they're still there. Okay. I can relax. I don't need to pay attention to that anymore. So it's the same way with our thoughts. We corral our thoughts on the wholesome, and then we can kind of sit down by the tree and feel safe and secure, knowing that everything is as it should be. And even if you have to check, you have to check a couple more times just to give yourself that sure feeling. Let me check again. Yep, still there. Yep, it's still there. You can keep doing that. Okay, I have to use the restroom real quick, so I'll be right back. Feel free to talk while I'm gone.
Where are you guys living? You are living in the UK, Veda, and
Oh, DJ? Yeah, I'm actually living in Canada. So
okay.
yeah, but the time zones work out, so it's like
Okay.
3 here, so
Okay.
after 3. Yeah.
I'm living in Belgium.
Oh, cool.
Belgium.
Yeah. The small country between France and Holland and Germany. We are in between.
All right. Okay, I'm back. Sorry for that, YouTube. Here we go. And I promise you guys, I was completely mindful and ardent while I was using the restroom. Okay. All right. Okay, okay, just as in last month of the hot season, when all the crops have been brought inside the village, a cowherd would guard his cows while staying at the root of a tree or out in the open. Since he needs only to be mindful that the cows are there, so too, there was need for me only to be mindful that those states were there. Tireless energy was aroused in me, and unremitting mindfulness was established. My body was tranquil and untroubled, my mind concentrated and unified. Quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, I entered upon and abided in the first jhāna. Okay, so this practice is a direct way to jhāna, is cultivating the thoughts on the wholesome and abandoning unwholesome thoughts. So, essentially, the main practices that Dhammarato teaches, from what I've surmised from my interactions and from the videos, is the breathing and this wholesome thoughts. And when I first called Dhammarato, welcome Yasen. We're going through a sutta here and discussing it. Good to have you. But when I first called Dhammarato, the only practice he gave me, he just was pretty much just talk yourself into a wholesome state. So talk yourself into it. And there was one moment I was walking in the park with my lamentation, sorrow, grief, and despair and unwholesome states. And then I thought to myself, what if I just think wholesome thoughts? What if I just talk myself into feeling happy? And so I did, and it worked. And I haven't looked back since. So it is kind of that simple. So there's wholesome thoughts and unwholesome thoughts. Wholesome thoughts are thoughts, there's no danger in them. So they feel good and there's no problem with them. And the thing that made me better at jhāna was just becoming more aware of the thoughts that I'm having, like throughout the day. So I would have moments of mindfulness and then moments of ignorance. But because I was determined to do the practice, I was resolute to do the practice, I became hyper aware of what's going on in my mind at any given moment. And when an unwholesome thought arises, immediately, then and there, I throw it out. And then you develop a different habit So now your habit is these wholesome thoughts that that condition how you feel about things. So many people live their lives in quiet desperation, and the only reason they're living their life in quiet desperation and not having a pleasant abiding is because there's an internal unwholesome dialogue going on. So thoughts of victimhood, thoughts of ill will, thoughts of sensual desire. So being angry at the world, being angry at somebody, craving for wanting something that you don't have, and the thought concerned about that. This is what takes us into hell. This is what brings a kind of hell state for us. So instead of thinking about heaven and hell as a magical place in the afterlife, think about heaven and hell as states of mind. So where do you want to be reborn in the next moment? Because heaven and hell is right in between your ears. Tireless energy was aroused in me. Unremitting mindfulness was established. My body was tranquil and untroubled. My mind concentrated and unified. Quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, I entered upon and abided in the first jhāna. And then ellipses. I directly knew birth is destroyed. The holy life has been lived. What was needed to be done has been done. There is no more coming into any state of being. So getting into first jhana, et cetera, going through all the process of jhana, going through all the process of insight and discernment leads to nibbana. So that's what birth is destroyed means. So death happens as a result of birth. So this is a perpetual cycle of things. So if you destroy birth, death is destroyed. Don't think about it on a don't think about it on an ontological perspective of things. Don't think about it as a metaphysical truth. Think about it as a lived experience. Think about it as being free of the fear of death here and now. Think about it as coming into this moment, no longer arriving somewhere. There's no more coming into any state of being. I'm not being reborn and dying over and over again anymore. I'm here. I have arrived. And this is enough. I'm satisfied. This was the third true knowledge attained by me in the third watch of the night. Ignorance was banished, and true knowledge arose. Darkness was banished, and light arose, as happens in one who abides diligent, ardent, and resolute. Suppose, bhikkhus, that in a wooded range there was a great low-lying marsh near which a large herd of deer lived. Then a man appeared desiring their ruin, harm, and bondage. And he closed off the safe and good path that led to their happiness. And he opened up a false path, and he put out a decoy and set up a dummy so that the large herd of deer might later come upon calamity, disaster, and loss. But another man came desiring their good, welfare, and protection, and he reopened the safe and good path that led to their happiness, and he closed off their path, the false path. And he removed the decoy and destroyed the dummy so that the large herd of deer might later come to growth, increase, and fulfillment. Bhikkhus, I have given the simile in order to convey a meaning. This is the meaning. The great low-lying marsh is a term for sensual pleasures. The large herd of deer is a term for beings. The man desiring their ruin, harm, and bondage is a term for Mara, the evil one. The false path is a term for the wrong eightfold path, that is, wrong view, wrong intention, wrong speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, and wrong concentration. The decoy is a term for delight and lust. The dummy is a term for ignorance. The man desiring their good, welfare, and protection is a term for the Tathagata, accomplished and fully enlightened, the safe and good path that led to their happiness, is a term for the noble eightfold path, that is, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So, bhikkhus, the safe and good path that leads to happiness has been reopened by me. The wrong path has been closed off, the decoy removed, the dummy destroyed. What should be done for his disciples out of compassion by a teacher who seeks their welfare and has compassion for them, that I have done for you, bhikkhus. There are roots of trees, these empty huts. Meditate, bhikkhus, do not delay, or else you will regret it later. This is our instruction to you. That is what the Blessed One said. The bhikkhus were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. All right, so he's essentially saying, here's what needs to be done. Go and do it. It's that simple. Here's the way to happiness. Here's the path. The way, the truth, and the life, so to speak. The true Dhamma. This is the only way to lasting fulfillment and happiness. And all other ways is just going to lead into dissatisfaction and problems and dis-ease. So that is inspiration to practice, to pay attention, become determined, resolute. And also there's a section from this next sutta, the sutta right following it, that I want to read because I think it's a particularly important section. It's more instruction on how to exactly still the thoughts. So when we do get ourselves into a wholesome state, or even if you're just having trouble with the unwholesome thoughts and you can't convert them to wholesome thoughts and you can't bring up wholesome thoughts, there's also a way to just still thinking entirely. And this will be an instruction for that. Okay. If while he is trying to forget those thoughts and is not giving attention to them, there still arise in him evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion, then he should give attention to stilling the thought formation of those thoughts. When he gives attention to stilling the thought formation of those thoughts, then any evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion are abandoned in him and subside. With the abandoning of them, his mind becomes steadied, internally quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated. Just as a man walking fast might consider, why am I walking fast? What if I walk slowly? And he would walk slowly. Then he might consider, why am I walking slowly? What if I stand? And he would stand. Then he might consider, why am I standing? What if I sit? and he would sit. Then he might consider, why am I sitting? What if I lie down? And he would lie down. By doing so, he would substitute for each grosser posture one that was subtler. So too, when a bhikkhu gives attention to stilling the thought formation of those thoughts, his mind becomes steadied, internally quieted, brought to singleness, and concentrated. Right, so there is a skill, sort of like a progression of slowing things down. When there's a lot of mental activity going on, we can kind of tap the brakes, so to speak. So at first we're walking, and then we can slow down our pace, and then tap the brakes a little bit more. Slow things down a little bit more. Slow down, 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 all the way until there's no movement at all. And you might find yourself in jhāna just by that method. So it's not as necessary to stop it all at once and come to a shrieking halt, but to apply the brakes slowly and smoothly and come to a nice and easy shutdown of things, and take it one step at a time. So when you do this, when you sort of still the thinking of the mind, other sense perceptions will clarify a little bit more. So you might hear some birds chirping in the distance. You might hear some cars passing by on the freeway. You might hear some subtle noises like the air conditioning unit or something like that. And just let them arise and pass away. And they can even be like music to your ears. And there is a pleasantness and the ease of residing in stillness. And when things are still down like this, now you can really do some ānāpānasati. So you can sort of lengthen and deepen how we breathe. So nice and slowly, we want our lungs to expand with a nice, satisfying amount of air, of a sense of pleasantness and fulfillment in each breath at a steady pace, all the way in and then all the way out. And if you find any unwholesome thoughts arising, thoughts of discomfort, a sense of lack, you can continue with the wholesome thought as well. So thoughts of, I don't need anything right now. I'm hanging out with my buddies, just relaxing, just fine right here as I am. And everything is fine and dandy. And the cows are in the herd, right where they're supposed to be. All right. So I think we'll open it back up for discussion now that we have a new friend who's joined. But yeah, good job, everyone. Congratulate yourself for being satisfied and sitting down and just doing nothing. Welcome, Patrick. We just got done reading a sutta, and we went into a little bit of a meditation there. But it always gladdens my mind to see a new friend come in. Another thing I'd like to reiterate and mention is that when it talks about stilling the thoughts, that's once you're already in, you can always apply and sustain on the wholesome until you realize that it gets kind of repetitive and you are feeling good, and now you can set those thoughts down. So there's different like avenues that you can take to come into a state of satisfaction. And it is an inner experiment. So I recommend you guys practice and continue to practice, because there's great benefits that comes out of it. And even while you're sitting in silence, adding a slight smile to your face, it makes a difference. So just a slight little smirk, you know. The Buddha is often depicted with just the slightest of smiles. Just kind of a smooth drip of satisfaction. And yeah, that's how jhāna operates. So it kind of just, I think what we're doing when we practice jhāna is activating different pleasure responses in our brain that we might get from things that happen. So we're learning how to subvert the external stimulus route to pleasure response, and we're learning how to activate it internally within our own mind. So the dopamine pleasure, the I like this and I want more of this, and then the serotonergic pleasure, this is enough, this is satisfying. This is all conjecture here, but if I had to guess, like PT is kind of like more dopamine, and Sukha is more like serotonin relief. And but the only reason I mention this is because thinking about it in that sense can kind of give you a better understanding of what we're evoking with jhāna. Is we're actually getting our fix, our chemical pleasure response. And once we get our fix, and we continue to get our fix, we can kind of just relax, knowing that we got our fix, and chill out even more, cool down. There are more sublime states than joy and rapture. There is a more sublime state than comfort and bliss of body. And it's just more profound levels of satisfaction. And it really has to do with what the contents of our mind is. So the first unwholesome thought you have is going to take you out of this pleasant state. And then you can recognize, do a analysis of what happened. What was the first thing that popped up that took me out of it? So it's kind of like a instant replay, like you're a sports commentator and you're watching sort of you're watching the unfoldments of your mind as if it's a sport, and you're seeing how what strategies lead to success and what strategies lead to failure, and you can analyze it within yourself. And once you see what leads to success and you taste the fruit of it, stick with it. Do that. Stay on it. So apply and sustain. You find yourself in a rhythm. Stay on the rhythm. So it's like a musician. They get in the zone, they find a groove, and they keep going. And if you get tired of that, then just set that down and relax even more. And this is kind of how the progression of things go. So if there are any questions, please feel free to go ahead, or any comments. If you guys would like to talk about the sutta or your experience of things, that's what this is all about. So please feel free to interject.
I have just one question about the time. It feels like I got right into something and that's what's going on. And I thought it was like 9 o'clock my time.
Yeah, there was a time change. So for me, when I started the call, it's the same time as I always do. But for you guys, there was a time change.
Oh, okay. I see. I see.
So I tried putting it in the chat. I don't know. Sorry about that, but it's
no worries.
It's going to be like an hour earlier now.
Okay.
Or I'll make sure to put it in the chat when the call will start.
Will you have a time change later too, or you already had it?
I'm actually not sure when the time change for me is. I live in California.
All right.
So next time I'll make sure. I don't actually live in the UK, so although it's the UK Sangha.
Yeah. Cheers.
Veda, you have anything to say? No? DJ, Christoph, Yasin?
Oh, I guess I got some stuff I can say. But yeah. I think it's quite helpful, like even discussing like the more subtle jhanas, to again still appreciate the first, like to really work that in and be like, yeah, this is good enough, especially when you were talking, Scott, well, during the sutta, about checking back in, like, hey, you know what, it's fine to come and check back in, hey, are there any hindrances here or whatever, and then you can just relax, like write down, like, not that you have to be, I think that's where the subtlety kind of comes in as well, is like when you're if you're like overworked, like, oh, I gotta get rid of all the hindrances and this is like a constant thing, right? It's like, no, you can just relax, let it relax, but we can check in. If a wholesome thought comes up, okay, cool, appreciate it, and then just let it drop. Yeah.
Yes. So there's a kind of finesse to this. There's a skill to this thing where you don't have to become like stubborn with how you do it. So if you get yourself into a stilling of the thoughts, it's okay to go back into wholesome thoughts.
Mhm.
Or so you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be like, no, I'm doing this now. And then now you have a frustration in your meditation, and you end up sitting there in an unwholesome state, and just like believing that you're meditating, so it's helping you.
Mhm.
But really what you should be doing is taking the right effort to get back into a satisfied state.
Yeah.
So that might be bringing up another thought. Or it might be taking a different breath. Or it might be changing your posture. Relax. Oh, I'm not going to move. I'm going to sit here just like this. No, maybe you do need to move a little bit and relax some part of your body and
Mix it up a little.
get into a more comfortable state. So yeah, that's the skill. And there's different avenues that you can go about dukkha nirodha. And yeah, what we talked about today with the sutta, the main method that was taught today is the avenue of seeing something as simply unwholesome. So this is going to harm me. So why am I doing it? Just stop doing it. Like, understand that it doesn't lead anywhere good. This isn't helping me. Let me stop doing it. Or I see, there's Mara. I see you, Mara. Mara is kind of just like what is it called in Gnosticism? They have the god that rules over that doesn't want you to escape the the lower realm.
Is it like the demiurge or something?
Yeah,
I'm trying to.
demiurge. Yeah, so Mara would be like the demiurge and Gnosticism, and enlightenment would be gnosis. So these are recurring themes, and I think they're useful archetypes to kind of just like identify and label what's going on inside of you. So and it can bring a sense of urgency and a sense of actual, like, it can inspire like a lot of zeal and right effort if you think about things as you are literally escaping like a lower realm of things. Okay, you're transcending samsara. This is a noble endeavor. So I think there is magic in it. So there is something magical about what we're doing here.
It definitely can be very helpful in terms of adding to that feeling of success, I think.
Right.
Like even like taking the time to, practice for like 10 minutes or whatever and really working in like, hey, this is very successful. Like what we are doing here is like worthwhile of time. There's like nothing that's actually, more worthwhile. It's coming back
Right.
again to thoughts of, oh, I could be spending my time doing something more productive or whatever. In that, you kind of come back and you're like, wait, no, this is really successful. So even when it's generating the pity, well, that's it, right? That feeling of success, that feeling of being a champion. When you think, oh, taking this nice, long, deep breath in and feeling satisfied right here and now is comparable to winning the Super Bowl. Like, and you really bring that in, like that.
You're winning the cosmic Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly.
So it is, and you can, and this does get into, this is the way of getting in things into cosmic proportions.
Mm-hmm.
So you continue the practice, continue the purification of mind. You can have the classical cosmic experiences that you might hear about in a lot of spirituality, becoming one with everything. So this is just boundless consciousness jhāna. It's not nibbana. It's not the final finale, but it is a really cool thing to experience.
Totally ordinary stuff.
Yeah, and then even at just the level of coming out, having the first wholesome thought, and then going from gladdening the mind, from going from dissatisfaction to satisfaction. That is winning the cosmic superbowl, so to speak. You're becoming a champ. You are the champion. Okay. You're sitting on top of your own pile of dirt, and there's nothing more fruitful, or there's nothing more worthwhile than that. That's life itself. Death is coming. This moment is all we have. So enjoying this moment is enjoying life. So there is a sense of nobility. This is a noble practice, and this is the noble and supramundane Dhamma. That's why it's given out for free, because it's kind of like, it's so good that out of how good it is, there is that compassion that you want other people to get onto this. And that's how it was taught to me, and that's why we talk about it together. So it's completely wholesome. So again, coming back to thoughts, that there's no danger in this thought. You could see, yeah, I could keep thinking this thought forever and it wouldn't harm me, but then I would just get tired of thinking, so I don't need to think it anymore. Right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and then not to crave for any exotic states of consciousness like the boundless jhanas, but to realize that even at the beginning of the path and at the end of the path, it's simply about satisfaction and dissatisfaction. So the only reason why all of these experiences happen, and nibbana itself, is so that you can simply be satisfied here and now. Completely ordinary. There's nothing magical about just being happy, being satisfied. But then, like, the levels and skills of the path is just kind of like little goodies along the way to keep you going, keep you practicing. But then even those are like, are objective, like they're a conditioned experience. The real understanding at the end of the road is just seeing dissatisfaction and seeing how it happens and how it ends, and then realizing that I can just be happy without anything right now. And that's good enough, and this is enough. And I don't need those exotic states. I don't need any magical things that preachers and teachers are trying to sell you on the spiritual marketplace. This is enough for me. Thank you very much. I don't need any complicated ideas, any overcomplications, any mental proliferation about the practice. I don't need an attainment. I don't need path attainments. Why do I need to be an arhat if I'm happy right now? What? Right?
Yeah.
Who cares about being an arhat? If I'm satisfied as I am right now, who cares about that? Right? I'd rather be happy. Go on.
I kind of like that as a kind of funny way of phrasing an almost wholesome thought, which is like, who cares? Like, one of these desires come up, like, who cares, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's just, yeah, at the end of the day, it's just like, okay, just being satisfied.
Yeah, like I'd rather be just satisfied person here than an arhat with social clout that may or may not be an arhat.
Mhm.
So it's like it's a game of being the winner. So you want to stop thinking of yourself as a victim of things. Yeah, and you want to start thinking of yourself as a winner of things. And it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, you're still the winner. And that feels good and satisfying. And literally no one can take that away from you. So there's something invincible, unshakable about it. And you realize the impermanence of all these things that people delude themselves into thinking are important. When so these things are not important. They can be fun toys to play with. So things you acquire in the world, status, fame, money, different kinds of talents. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them, but they're all impermanent, and death is coming. So the most important thing is to be enjoying life, enjoying the breath, enjoying what's going on here, being compassionate to yourself and other people, living life with ease, with tranquility, with pleasantness. Because if there is an afterlife, if there is, this will lead to a better destination or escaping the cycle of it completely. And if there isn't an afterlife, then it will lead to happiness here and now. So it's good no matter which way you think about it, right? This is the way. But yeah, it is cool to entertain more philosophical, ontological perspectives of things, like where did this body come from, and what is this body made of, and is this body me? So what is me, right? So I'm so afraid of death, but I don't even understand like how birth happened. Where did that come from? I just came out of nothing. How does that make sense?
Who cares?
Right? Who cares? Yeah. Who cares if I'm satisfied?
Yeah.
But I'm more talking about there is this underlying fear of death. And this underlying fear of death, it comes from sort of a belief to be a body. And this belief to be a body is fallacious at its roots. So I'm not denying that contemplation of things, because I think that was a really important thing for me, to sort of transcend the fear of death. But then ultimately, having a view one way or another about, oh, I'll never die, I'm eternal consciousness or whatever, that's not satisfying either. So who cares? It's better just to be satisfied here and now. All right.
Well,
so
yeah,
I think that was a good discussion. Thank you, DJ, for adding to the discussion. It was very wonderful to hear your thoughts about things.
Fun.
And everyone else, I hope you guys enjoyed. If anyone has anything to add or closing remarks, please feel free to go ahead. This is a Sangha.
Yeah.
So we are friends here, and we want to develop friendship and a sense of community. So don't be shy, talk about your experience, talk about your practice, difficulties. All right, then. I guess I'll see you guys next time. And thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Have a good time.